In our Visual Studio Code, we're going to say File, Add Folder to Workspace. We're going to be on our desktop and we're going to say New Folder. We're going to call this WebDriver IO Tutorial. And we're going to say Create. Once we do that, we click on Add. I just created this folder, so I'm going to trust the authors of the files in this folder. Next thing you want to do is you can toggle the terminal using this option here, or you can say terminal, new terminal. You want to ensure that you are in the folder, the root of the folder. So I'm going to say npm init. And what this does is set up a new npm package. We are going to be initializing a new npm package. It's going to be asking us for some details such as package name, version, description, entry point, test command. We are going to leave those blank for now. Git repository, keywords, author, you can enter your name, license, and then it presents to you what it is about to write, and you can just enter if it's okay. In this case it is, so I'm going to type in yes. And then over here I should now be able to see a package JSON. This package JSON is going to contain everything that I just typed in. So WebDriver IO tutorial and the author Julia Pottinger. Everything else was left as default. The next dependency that we will need is WebDriver IO. So we're going to say npm install WebDriver IO --save. This --save allows you to save it to your package JSON so that if you're working or collaborating with other persons, they have a list of all the packages or npm modules that you are using and can do an npm install and pull down all of those packages so that their project will also work. So WebDriver IO has been successfully installed. If we look at our package JSON, we see here that it has the dependency of WebDriver IO version 7.7.8. This is the latest version of WebDriver, and this is the version that we will be using throughout this tutorial. If you go into your root of the folder, you'll see that we now have a package.json and also a node module folder. The node module folder contains all the extended versions of the packages that we have installed. So you'll see things like Babel, all of those comes with WebDriver IO, etc. Now, normally if you're going to be sharing this project with someone, you will git ignore the node modules folder, but we won't cover git and all of that in this tutorial, but that's something to note. Now that we have installed WebDriver IO, the next thing that we want to do is install the WDIO CLI. This is a command line interface from WebDriver IO that is going to allow us to set up the WebDriver IO config file. Now this config file is going to store the path to our test that we want to run, any frameworks that we want to use, reporters if we're going to be running it on Chrome, Firefox, different browser versions if we want to run it headless, or WebDriver IO config file is going to contain all of that data. So by installing WebDriver IO CLI, it makes it easier for you to install and configure your project, as they are going to ask you some questions and give you some pre-configured options that is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you are starting a new project. So we're going to install the CLI by saying npm I at wdio /CLI --save. We have now installed the WDIO CLI and we want to run it. We do that by saying npx WDIO config. Now npx means node package executor, and it comes along with npm when you install it, so you don't have to worry about installing npx separately. It comes along with npm. So we say npx WDIO config, and that is going to run the config file for us. So it's going to ask us a lot of questions. We can use the arrow keys to go to the different options. So where are we doing our automation backend? For now, we are doing it on our local machine, but of note, WebDriver IO allows you to run in the cloud using Test, Sauce Labs, Browser Stack, Testing Bot, Lambda Test, different services, or if you have your own Selenium cloud and you want to set it up. So as we go through this, you're going to see a lot of the different options that WebDriver IO allows you to run with. And they are different options that you can explore. There are also other courses on Test Automation University, such as WebDriver IO with Appium, WebDriver IO with Tools, and these are frameworks and tools that work along with WebDriver IO that after learning this course, you can go and take a look at just to learn more about all the features that WebDriver IO has. So now we're doing this on our local machine, so we're going to press enter. Different frameworks that we can use WebDriver IO with: Mocha, Jasmine, Cucumber. There's a course on Test Automation University as well about Mocha, so you can definitely go and check that out. Mocha and Jasmine are pretty similar in that they use the describe and it. I personally use Mocha a lot, so in this tutorial we'll be using Mocha. So we aren't going to be using any compiler. We're going to select the default for where our tests are located. And it asks us if we want WebDriver IO to auto-generate some test files. We're going to say yes, and WebDriver IO is going to auto-generate some test files for us in addition to setting up our config file. Auto-generating the test files is a new feature that WebDriver IO have added in version 6 and 7. So if you've taken this course before when it was just for version 5, then this option would not have been there. But with the recent updates, they allow you to auto-generate some test files and some page objects. That just really helps you to get a better start of how the project works, and it's really helpful for beginners. So we want to create some page objects. So we're going to say yes. And where our page objects are located, we're going to select the default. Now it's asking us which reporter we want to use. There are different options for reporters. I normally use Spec. You can use Allure, you can use Dot, etc. So there are different options that you can use. I normally use Spec, so to select I press space, or in that case it's unselecting, and then I could have gone down and selected others with my arrow key. Now it's saying if we want to add a service to our test setup. So these services are what helps us to run our test. So we have, as I mentioned, Appium, which is very good for mobile automation. Browser Stack and Sauce are very good for running in the cloud on different devices. Sauce Labs has a lot of different devices that you can use. Selenium Standalone and Chrome Driver, they allow you to run on browsers locally or in the cloud. For this project, we're going to be using Selenium Standalone. So we're going to press space to unselect Chrome Driver as it is currently selected. And then we're going to use the down arrow to go down to Selenium Standalone. Press space to select Selenium Standalone. If you just scroll down, you see a lot more options. So there's Appium, Firefox Profile, cross-browser testing, ESLint service, wait for, Lambda test, report portal, Docker, WDIO UI 5, WireMock. So Slack integrations, image comparisons, WinApp driver, which is really good if you want to do automation on Windows desktop or Windows devices, performance total, AWS device farm, etc. But out of those many options, and you can just see the amount of things that WebDriver IO allows you to work with and integrate with, we're just going to be using Selenium Standalone. So the base URL, we're going to leave that blank. Then it starts installing all the dependencies. So we see the local runner, Mocha framework, we selected spec, and we also selected Selenium standalone service. So it's installing all of those things that we selected. Now it gives you instructions on how to start. So it says npx wdio run, and it gives the name of the config. Before we get into that, let us look at what we have. So we now have a folder called test. Within that folder, we have page objects, specs, right? If we go into page objects, we're going to see logging page, page, secure page, etc. Now, when we go into that, we see how WebDriver IO sets up page objects. So you have the locator here for username, you have the locator here for password, button, submit. Then it has a function to log in. So it's going to take a username and a password, and it's going to click on it. And so this is opening the login page. Based on this returning a super, I am assuming that there is a main open function that is accepting a parameter, in this case logging. So if we go back to page, we should see a main page. And as I said, open is accepting a parameter. So it's going to HTTPS the Internet Heroku app, and it's appending logging that was passed in. So this is also the same website that we'll be using throughout this tutorial. If I go to it, it is the Internet Heroku app. It has a lot of different examples that you can choose from and practice, such as drag and drop, so it switches. Also has form authentication, so it has username and password. There are a lot of different things that you can just check out and get a feel for when you're doing test automation with this website. Now, if we go into secure page, this is where we're checking for a flash alert. So when we're on the Internet Heroku app and we are on login, right? So if I say /login, because that's what the test says. This is the flash alert. So if I right click and I inspect this, I see it has an ID of flash. So I'm expecting that the ID of flash is used somewhere in the test, right? So hashtag flash gives us the flash ID here. So whether it's a positive scenario or negative scenario, it returns that flash and we can validate that the user is successfully logged in. If we go to specs, this is where the test will be. So we are saying I should log in with valid credentials, which are Tom Smith and super secret password. I'm expecting secure flash alert to be existing. I'm expecting secure flash alert to have text containing. You may be wondering what these assertions are, and WebDriver IO in version 6 and 7 have started to use their own expect assertion. Before that, they didn't have their own assertion built in like this, but you could have installed other assertions like chai.js. You can still do that. Later on, I'll show you chai.js and make comparisons between it and the WebDriver IO expect assertion. All right, so this is the test. It's going to log in and it's going to expect the secure page to be existing and to contain the text you logged into a secure area. So if we go ahead and look back in our terminal, we see that the command to run is npx wdio run wdio.conf.js. So if I copy that, paste here, then it starts to run the tests. So it opens it in Chrome and it ran. That was a bit fast, but as we see here, it says it passed. So those are all the dependencies that you need to set up WebDriver IO. And in the further tutorials, we'll talk more about how everything works together.